Hello there. My name is Sassafras, and I would like to talk to you about the heart of witchcraft. I'm a Wiccan high priest, and more importantly, I'm a witch. I would like to talk to you a little bit about at least my own understanding of things. My real goal in recording this podcast is just to get you to ask questions, to get you to wonder, to get you to kind of flex your mental and psychic muscles if you're interested in this particular aspect of our lives. Witchcraft, as it seems, and the occult in general, is gaining wider and wider purchase in our society. And this is a very, very interesting time to be interested in these things. While there has always been hidden in the corners of society this kind of hidden element, it's sacred. It's also ever so slightly forbidden. It's just something that, like, the wide society would say, oh, good grief, no, you don't want anything to do with that. That's what witchcraft has always been. Not necessarily as a social stigma type thing, because witchcraft, in a lot of ways, is an exploration and an appreciation of natural forces, of forces that are present in our reality, in our world, in our surroundings, whether we recognize it or not. We are living in and surrounded by these things. In the West, we like to think that we've kind of used science to completely sever mankind from the irrational, to separate ourselves from the religious, to separate ourselves from the spiritual, or we've attempted to say, oh, well, we can analyze the religious, analyze the spiritual using our science and our rationality. But part of being human is not necessarily always being rational, and there are always bits and pieces that rationality doesn't quite grasp, doesn't quite comprehend. Um, Even if they can justify it using a psychological process. For example, when you walk down a darkened stairwell, say into your basement, and you get this really odd and undescribable feeling, and it's a genuine fear. Even if you turn the light on, you just the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you just feel a little bit unnerved. This is kind of the animal side of who you are and what you're about. Um, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and that particular emotion can kind of lead you to other things. In a lot of ways, I think of magic as being kind of an expression of this kind of very difficult to chart, very difficult to comprehend aspect of human nature. I think it's inevitable. I think that in every society, you are always going to have this bit of secret lore, hidden lore, things. I mean, it's not just it's not like it's the province of these scholars with these rotting books in this ancient monastery up in the hills, where few dare to travel or dwell or tread because it's dangerous. It's just off. It's not right. It's not like that. Your grandmother exercised and did various aspects of folk magic. This is a part of the human experience. If you in your household ever had a horseshoe, whether it's upside down or right side up, or regardless of whether it's holding in the luck or it's having the bad luck flow off of it, like it's a psychic umbrella, it's the same thing. If you throw salt over your shoulder, if you say bless you, all parts of this superstition are not alien to this concept that I'm talking about. If your grandmother ever once a year took down from above the doorway the ancient horseshoe and walked around the property, even if she just did it the once, waving it around, saying it's gathered up all this good luck for the whole year, and now we're gonna spread it around. That's what we're talking about. That's what it is. That's magic in its own way. Does it have a purpose? Is it trying to accomplish something, and is it doing so using what might seem to be an oblique method? That's witchcraft. As for myself, as I said, I am a Wiccan high priest. Wicca is of relation to witchcraft. It isn't necessarily the same thing as defined in our society now. The first first Wiccans who were out and about and public about it would not have called themselves Wiccans. They would have called themselves witches. They would have said that what they're doing is witchcraft. They would have not quite understood what you meant by Wicca. In the modern context, Wicca is its own sort of discrete and separate entity, and there's kind of this separation. But this separation is just the modern way that we interpret it. You don't necessarily have to have that particular separation. Some people feel very strongly about it. I could take it either way. It doesn't really matter to me. That being said, I would define Wicca as being perhaps the religious aspect of the thing that we do, of our relationship in a more Wicca draws upon the divine. Witchcraft calls upon the natural. Witchcraft doesn't necessarily, although in history it almost always did, call upon deities, deity forms, spirits, demons, angels. You had priests doing operations in this fashion. You had all sorts of folks doing if in what a lot of people would call witchcraft, or rather what what their let's say less curious, less experimental brethren would call witchcraft, and a lot of people have kind of suffered for that. But that's another thing entirely to talk about. What do I mean by Wicca? Wicca is our taking your feelings of devotion, of your feelings of wanting to call out to something higher than yourself, better, perhaps better than yourself, something that inspires you in that very particular way, in that religious and spiritual fashion that just kind of calls out to you and says, here I am, and I am not alien to you. And it's for me one of the best things about Wicca as a religion, of which I'm a practitioner, that is my religion, is that you can see and feel aspects of that particular relationship all around you throughout the year, throughout the week even. If you ever have found yourself looking up at the moon and just having this very odd particular feeling that isn't really addressed by much of anything in our society, that is what I am attempting to draw upon when I worship the gods. When I look to the goddess, when I think of the moon, I am immediately drawn to that concept of the divine feminine. I'm drawn to perhaps various specific deities, goddesses that have existed throughout time, been known perhaps by many names. There are a lot of different ways that people view divinity, and this is true, and ultimately it's you in the I tend to find myself being, or wanting to be, aspiring to be, because everything is you do what you can to be accepting of as many things as possible. You don't want to shut people out. That is not fair. That has been done to you. You don't want to do it necessarily. You want to be a big tent pagan. You want to say that anyone who has any relationship to the gods of old, to the old gods, and their ways of being, and this sense of plurality, this sense of polytheism, all of these people are your brethren, whether or not you particularly look to Freya for guidance, look to Odin, look to various Hindu deities. I mean, as many societies, as many different cultures there are always going to be deities of those cultures. And it's a tricky thing, because on one hand, you don't want to say, I have an understanding of this particular I've devoted myself to this particular deity, and so I have an understanding of it, and you don't ever want to place yourself in a particular place of authority over a person's relationship with the divine. That's for them. It's a very personal thing. Which kind of makes the concept of being a high priest of the brethren of the Wicca a little bit tricky, because on one hand, I will never particularly say to a person that their understanding is off or mistaken. I'll never say, no, that's not real. That's bogus. That's BS. I won't really say that as concerns a person's personal beliefs, a person's deeply held beliefs. all of that is up to them and up to revision. That doesn't necessarily mean that a person can hear something and then kind of go back and question, wait a minute, wait a minute. I had always thought that this goddess was also a goddess of the moon. Wait, I have to go look this up. I have to do some research. I have to find out, was there ever a connection between the moon and the goddess that I am ascribing to the moon? And then you ask yourself a number of questions about that. All of your conclusions are only ever going to be tentative. They are only ever going to need revision, need attention with further information. It's really not an automatic thing. It's not, there's not a dogma of this stuff. It's not driven upon you to believe X, Y, and Z, and you must, or else you're not a real person in this. But by the same token, you shouldn't be a zealot. You shouldn't be completely convinced of anything. It's your journey. You're on that path. You're the one and on the other side of that coin, you're the one that's responsible for your own spiritual growth. And that's kind of where I think a lot of people find themselves. I think a lot of people are looking for community, are looking for other people, if only to talk to about the stuff that they're experiencing and the interests that they have, and they want to do some magic, and they're not quite sure how to make that happen, and so they need some guidance, they want some guidance, they want someone to talk to them about it. They may not want someone to absolutely lay down the law, as it were, and if anyone is trying to say specifically how things are or should be done and should not be done another way, I would say that's a reason to be a little cautious. Anyway, I'm wildly off topic here. To drag it back to the beginning here, where we're just talking about witchcraft, what is witchcraft? What is magic? Witchcraft is doing magic in a particular way. It's not necessarily like doing it always the same way. It's still witchcraft if you don't have to draw a circle and invoke the quarters to do magic. Magic is, mostly in my mind, magic is when you have a particular formula to follow, a particular experiment, a particular action to take, and your intention, and you have a solid intention behind that action, which isn't necessarily directly related to what you're doing. So, for example, you're not, walking across the street and picking up trash, but you may say, I would really like it if this particular park that I am close to, if it had less pollution in it, if people were less inspired to drop off bags that are going to flutter in the breeze. If your intention is I want to clean up this park because whenever I go there, it looks shabby, it looks bad, and I feel bad. When I look at it, I get a bad feeling. I feel like we are bad at what we're doing in preserving some aspect of the natural in our own lives. And you say, look, I care a lot about this particular park. I want to do something for it. There's nothing stopping you, and in fact, it would only really be useful for yourself and the magic that you would do to actually physically go out there with a bag, gather up trash, gather up litter, scold people who, any action that you could take to actually improve the situation is not off the table and is only ever encouraged if you decide to take up an operation to make it better. To make things better in your area, to better be able to improve the situation there. But on the other hand, if some part of you kind of, like when you look at that park and you see that it's in this sort of dilapidated state, you perhaps psychologically transfer onto the park a personage, a personality which feels down because people are trashing it, because people are disrespecting it. And you say to yourself, I really like this park. I want this park to be better than it is. Not only am I going to pick up trash, I'm also going to burn incense, make an offering of literally anything. Different deities. I believe one of the stories, gods appreciate gifts, but it doesn't necessarily matter what those gifts are or how humble they are. It's the sentiment behind that. Even Lord Krishna accepted a gift in an offering of leaves from a very, very poor and I mean, in across religions, you'll find an example of the deities honoring and accepting the gift of a person in incredibly humble circumstances, because what they care about isn't actually what's put before them. It's more about the feelings and the emotions that went behind that. Um, so, what magic does is often for these people in these pitiable circumstances, it grants power to the powerless. It gives you agency. It gives you a mode of action to take when you've exhausted everything else. Let's say that you're out there all the time. You've done your work. You've done all of the physical things you can do, but you really just want there to be, you want other people to, when they look at the park, say, I am not going to trash this. I am going to honor this place because it's lovely and we need more of it. Now, in a way, you would be wanting to do magic to alter the consciousness of the people that perceive the park. You don't necessarily have to think of it that way, and it's not necessarily like, you're trying to enchant people, you're trying to mentally compulse them into not littering. Perhaps what you're trying to do is strengthen the spirit of that particular park. And what is the spirit of the park? Why does the park have a spirit necessarily? I mean, often in most human societies there is an element of animism, of looking upon the inanimate and granting unto it personality, granting unto it some sort of animation in what it is. Whenever you look at a tree and you say, this isn't just a tree, this isn't just a physical object. Most humans are not materialists. We do not believe only in crude matter and crude particles that we're interacting with. When we look at a particular tree, when we look at a truly impressive specimen of almost anything, we find it impossible to just think, that's a big old tree. That's a giant, giant whale. That's a big fish. No. We put personalities into these things. In a in a body, let's see, Urieville, well, a particular lake. Let's say it's a particular lake where I live. There was for the longest time this particular fish, and let's call him Old Gramps. And like people would try and catch Old Gramps. He kind of took on a personality, what he liked to do. Now, a person could look at this and say, it's just a fish. It's just a dumb, dumb fish. And in fact, if you hooked something very similar in appearance to Old Gramps, you wouldn't even know it wasn't what someone else would call Old Gramps. But by the same token, it's like, yeah, you will walk around and encounter things and wonder at them and grant them all kinds of aspects and elements, regardless of whether you're into witchy stuff or not. But if you are into witchy stuff, you find yourself, I wouldn't say that you're ascribing this more often to nature. I would say that you're recognizing these qualities within nature. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't really see anything wrong with that. I don't see anything harmful in that. We live in an enchanting and enchanted world. And all too often we have to abandon these concepts. We have to kind of put this aside to face the day, to face the working hours that we do. But those working hours aren't forever. And even if you have just a moment of your day, even if you're just looking outside on your way from the building you work in to the car you're going to drive home to, and then from the car you drove home from work to your home, if you get out and during that, 7 minutes total between those two things, you look up and you see the big ass full moon, and you get that feeling that you can't quite put a finger on. I would say that's really what we're talking about here. That's the root of what we're talking about here, and we chase that down because it's inspiring, because we look at it and we say, this is really neat and interesting. So, when a person is going to do magic, it is usually a sort of I tend to think of it as a crystallization of your will. It's a forming of your desire. You're doing a thing, you have a purpose in mind. In the ancient world, prior to kind of the modern conception of the will as being an essential component of magic is only really identified in the modern context. I mean, within the last 100 years, 200 years. With the kind of revival and with the investment placed into what it comes to be called high magic or ceremonial magic at the beginning of the 20th century, by the Golden Dawn, by others. There are a lot of really eclectic people. The interest in magic has never really gone away, but this current wave that we're from can be traced in some ways to that time. And the face of this is the will, the forging of an iron will. You have a desire, you are putting your intentions out there into the universe, and you are getting and affecting change with those intentions. Well, that is true. Prior to this particular time, one of the methods that was used was using astrology, using the positioning and the placement of the planets, and thus it's not just having something in mind, it's having something in mind and then looking at a number of different conditions, in this case celestial conditions. Where is this planet? Where is that planet? When you have an understanding of astrology and the placement of those planets, you can see, if you have a desire, you can see the best time and place kind of to plant the seed for that desire, to plant the little kernel that will grow and grow and grow because you sought out the proper time for it. In the end, I don't necessarily see that as divorced from the concept of having a particular will, because it takes a great amount of discipline to limit your intentions to waiting for that very particular time to do what you need or what you want to do. Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you can wait for the conditions. You have the self-control to take the time to observe those conditions, and you let things play out that way. I don't see that as anything but complementary to your will. It's really what you desire and how you go about doing that. I am not coming out and saying what magic you should be doing or how you should be doing your magic. I'm going to present, or I'm going to try to present throughout this podcast, a number of different ways that people have done this through time, a number of different perspectives perhaps, and my understanding of these things is not universal. I will always encourage you to go out and find out. Hopefully what I'm doing is giving you reason to dig, reason to find some truth, find your truth, find some element of what fulfills this particular impulse in you. And I know for a lot of folks, when you first get involved in this stuff, you have almost a fervor. You are desperate for more information, for anything. You want to be able to do things now, now, now. Well, that's where I would say that patience helps form your willpower. You often don't have a choice but to wait, and that's something which you can appreciate. If you go off half-cocked, if you don't properly focus, which takes patience as well, you are going to find that you're wasting a lot of your efforts, or you're not doing it the way that you want to do it. A lot of people, when they come into this, will want to do it perfectly. They will seek out methods and they want to do it perfectly, so they find the methods, then they want someone to show them how to do the methods, and they wait all this time to do it right. And then the moment, while they think that they have things pretty solid, they think that they're in a good position, they bump into some other piece of knowledge and they say, crap, I've wasted all of this time, I need to go in a different direction because I'm not in the right direction. And they sit there on the in the armchair, and they don't go out and get it. They never take action. They never implement the thing that they're so excited about. It's a lot easier to keep digging up information than it is to try and apply that information. But that, I would think, is kind of a bit of the test, as it were. That's one of those things where you really need to go out there and wrestle with it. Wrestle with magic. Wrestle with concepts of magic. Wrestle with your own capacity to learn more and engage all of these various drives of the human consciousness in pursuing the mystical and the magical, the enchanted world that we're in, but in so many ways are inured to. It's like we're inoculated against it in a variety of ways and purposes. And a lot of these purposes are completely unconscious. It's not like someone is coming out and saying, look, we need to quash all the imagination out of this generation because that's just, we can't have it, and they just go on with that. It's not. There's no like inquisition for this. There's no one trying to drive it out of our society. If anything, I think we were in a position to witness and watch as this grows and grows and grows. And it's not necessarily just about what you might buy at Hot Topic. It's not about what clothes you would be finding suddenly showing up in various department stores, or hey, that's at Kmart, or wow, I saw a pentacle at Walmart, where previously these organizations you don't think would ever have had these particular objects. And it may be that they're just doing it out of a sense of commercialism, because they think that this particular design would grab a quick buck. It completely in the background, where these things are just showing up, and it's just a coincidence, or society is reaching and going in that direction. It's kind of funny to watch popular culture go towards these things that previously they never would. And the occult is certainly a part of that. So, what is my real intention with this podcast? What I would like to do is like I said, is to try and explore the concept of what is witchcraft, what is our relationship to the gods. Is that vital? Is that important in the pursuit of witchcraft? Are the two complementary to each other? I'm not trying to alienate anyone with this. It's really up to you as to how you see it. How I see it, my own perspective, is that Wicca and witchcraft is effectively almost the same thing. When I am looking at and trying to perform witchcraft to accomplish a particular aim, I will often, and I don't necessarily feel a compulsion to, I don't have to, but I will often call upon the aid of the gods to help this particular intention forth, or to not necessarily like, whatever suits your divine will. It's not necessarily binding yourself to that. It's saying, look, if you, a deity, can recognize within me a particular portion of something that honors you, of something is, if there's something about what I want to accomplish here that is of your essence, would you help me? I'm going to do my thing, and I don't necessarily absolutely need your help for it to be successfully accomplished. But by the same token, help me. I have a relationship with you. You and I have been doing this thing. We've been going through stuff. I adore you, and I don't need a reward here. That's not what this is about. But if you would see fit to aid me in this, I would be very grateful. It kind of turns into, again, the giving of gifts, the giving of offerings to a deity. There are times when we do magic, and if a person were to do magic with no religious inclination whatsoever, it still kind of turns into, well, let's say that you do your magic and it's completely successful. Do you not have a sense of gratitude? And in your own way, could you not express that gratitude in a particular manner? I mean, doing ceremony, I think, is also an essential part of the human puzzle that we find ourselves confronted with and having to wrestle with and having to come with conclusions on. So, in any case, this podcast's intention is just to try and get folks to ask questions. I'm going to try and have particular focuses with each one of my things. I'm going to talk to you about information here and there. Whenever I go to a public pagan event, meetup, what have you, whether it's a pagan pride day or it's an open full moon ritual or something like that, one thing, at least very early on, and even later, when I find myself bumping into, when I overhear or I'm part of a conversation and someone name drops a book, a concept, a particular author, or a particular famous person involved in this stuff, if someone is going to talk and they suddenly go off on a tangent about Aleister Crowley, or Aleister Crowley, however a person tends to hear it, I would like to be able to give people a little bit of understanding as to what on earth is being said. If you can enter into one of these conversations with someone and this person says, "Oh, well, you would see that in Francis Bardon if you were to read him," and so on and so forth, and talk about Hermeticism. It's like, well, what is that? What is the on-ramp for all of this occulty stuff? And in my mind, if I can do anything to provide you with that on ramp, if I can do anything to provide you with the curiosity and drive, if I can awaken that in you and get you to go out and do your own research, get your own minds going on this stuff, I would find it very, very rewarding. We're going to see how things go, and I'm going to take it slow. I'm going to try and keep these podcasts limited to about 30 minutes because I think 30 minutes is really all that I can bear to try and stay on topic. I tend to ramble, as this recording demonstrates. But I would like to thank all of you for spending some time with me and listening. I look forward to recording more of these with you, and I will talk to you soon. This has been Sassafras, and the heart of witchcraft is really our goal here. Thank you so much.